Hey guys, welcome to another video. I've been trying to do this video for like 3 days now, and every time I try, I get busy doing something else, so I'm really sorry for the wait. Today I'm going to talk about a pretty interesting red flag, mainly because it's such a general thing that I think it applies to a lot of people, not just abusive and problematic people. Being impulsive and reckless with your personal finances is a trait that I think a lot of people can relate to. Some people are just really bad at managing money. It's a very common problem, and this doesn't make them a narcissist. You really need to examine the motivation and the driving force behind people's poor spending habits. I'll be the first to admit I spend entirely too much money on stuff that I don't need. But I like to buy a lot of tropical fruit and nuts and organic stuff, and that stuff's not cheap. But I'm not doing it to show off. I'm not manipulating people. It's not like I have an immature mind and I want shiny new toys and I want to spend money to show off. I do it for my health. My health is my motivation, and I think it's an important thing to spend money on. I am impulsive, however, and I do buy things I probably don't need for my own entertainment, and sometimes I do end up regretting my decision. And a lot of people spend money on clothes and shoes and getting their hair done and doing their nails. But if it's for your own personal enjoyment and it makes you feel good, you're not hurting anyone. You might, however, have another problem. You might just be bored and depressed and insecure, and that's why you shop. But then again, that's not a narcissistic problem. If you don't fit the other red flag traits that I've spoken about, and if you don't already have the 5 out of 9 traits for diagnosis in the DSM, that does not make a person a narcissist. There's a term known as conspicuous consumption, and that's when people buy things specifically to show off to the rest of the world what they can afford. This in particular is pretty narcissistic, but it's narcissistic in the general sense of the word, not in the psychological sense. Nobody needs fancy cars and big giant houses and boats and jewelry, but if you can afford it and it makes you happy and you're not hurting someone else, then chances are you're not a narcissist. Like I said, you have to look at the driving force behind the behavior. A narcissist is very immature, and as a result, they have a very hard time planning ahead and seeing tomorrow. They live in the moment, and their inner child is really controlling their actions and their thoughts. They want the thing now. They can't even say to themselves, I don't need this thing. I should maybe save my money for something more important. My ex-boyfriend was absolutely horrible at managing money. He almost never went grocery shopping, and he would just buy food from outside, and it added up. He took a cab everywhere instead of taking a bus or walking, and I know that's a really bad example because that's kind of become the norm. So here's the same behavior in the narcissistic sense, and you can definitely see how it differs from a non-narcissist with just a bad spending habit. He's in a band, as I've mentioned before, and he wants to be a rock star so badly. He spends entirely too much money on ridiculously flashy clothes and accessories. He spends money like a celebrity. And he does it partly to convince other people that he's a big deal, but I think he also does it to convince himself. I think the biggest example of his narcissism and his fantasy life happened last week. He's still experiencing a really bad narcissistic injury, even 6 months after I left him. Yesterday was June 8th. That made 6 months since we broke up. His narcissism has gotten so much worse since I left him. Now that the summer is starting, there are a lot of outdoor music festivals, and he really wanted to be part of one. So he picked one that was way out of state, and the rule was you had to sell 50 tickets in advance to be allowed to perform. And he doesn't know anybody in this state, so he knew he wasn't going to be able to sell 50 tickets, and they were about $150. Those are not cheap tickets. So he knew he wouldn't be able to sell any, so he shelled out all the money to be able to play the festival. In addition to that, he had to rent a van, and he had to buy food, and he had to travel for 3 days. So altogether, it cost about $10,000 to play the festival. And the interesting thing about this example is that he didn't tell anyone how much he spent, because that would have been something to be ashamed of. Paying to play it kind of means in the music industry that you're a failure. But the other musicians knew how much it cost, and people talk. He wanted his name on the flyer so badly, and he really wanted people to think he was a big deal, so he shelled out all the money to be able to play. So his driving force behind spending all the money was that he wanted people to think that he was progressing in his career. But it's not real. Anyone can pay to perform. His band isn't going anywhere. He's not the rock star that he thinks he is in his own head, but he's created a fantasy world where he is famous, and he needs to really keep it up. People spend a lot of money trying to be what they're not, but the driving force and the motivation behind why narcissists spend a lot of money is 100% designed to feed and maintain their extremely fragile ego. When I think about it, it's kind of embarrassing that I'm able to come up with an example for every single red flag that my boyfriend exhibited. And if you can share one of your own, please do so below in the comment section. I read every single comment, I just don't have time to respond to all of them. So that's the end of this video. Thank you guys so much, and I'll see you soon.